And joining me now, as promised, is White House economic advisor Jared Bernstein. Jared, thank you very much for joining me today.
I can't believe how long it's been since I've talked to you, so I'm really happy to be here.
Last time you were on this show, I think I was out for...
I think that's right.
Who knows what reason. Maybe I was sick.
Back.
Maybe I had a baby.
I think you had a baby.
It's good for you. It's good that you're here on this day. The president called the GOP fiscally demented. What does that mean?
It means that if we're even thinking about a default or playing these kinds of political games, using the debt ceiling as hostage for the kinds of so-called negotiations these folks are talking about, it is the pinnacle of irresponsible governance. Remember, two things I want to add to the good conversation you were just having. First of all, this is paying for existing spending obligations. We can't say that enough. A lot of times this gets framed as fiscal responsibility. No, it is the height of fiscal irresponsibility because it means you're not paying for spending that Congresses and presidents have already signed off on. And in fact, what would it do? You just had a good conversation about this. Well, one of the things it would do would be to jack the interest rate up to levels that are probably unforeseen for the most pristine debt in the world. That's U.S. sovereign debt. That would make servicing our debt more expensive, not less expensive. It's the exact opposite of what they're talking about, and I think that's what the president means. Second point. Think about where this economy is right now. I mean, we have a 50-year historic low on the unemployment rate, about 11 million jobs since this president got here. We now have inflation coming down both in consumer and producer prices 6 months in a row. What a completely ridiculously awful time to get involved in this kind of posturing when this kind of hostage taking of the debt ceiling when the economy is really on the mend.
Can I ask the obvious question that I think doesn't get asked enough? Why is it okay to keep raising our debt? Why is it okay to be in as much debt as we are currently in and for it to keep increasing? We're at $31 trillion. Why is that crazy to say we shouldn't keep raising it?
It's not crazy. And I think what's crazy is to think that the debt ceiling is the place where you have that discussion. If members of Congress, I don't care if they have a D, more importantly, Joe Biden doesn't care, they have a D or an R next to their name. If they want to come to the White House and talk to him about responsible plans for reducing the debt, for paying for our obligations, on a forward-looking basis, because remember, the debt ceiling is backwards-looking, he is happy to do so. Now, if you're talking about spending cuts that gut the IRS and enable wealthy tax cheats not to pay their taxes, you don't have a partner in Joe Biden. But if you're talking about spending plans that pay for what it is you want to do, if you're talking about ideas that are going to help the middle class and lower income people, of course he's there as a partner. He's very proud of the $1.7 trillion in deficit reduction that was achieved over his presidency in 21 and 22, and he would like to build on that. That's not this discussion, Katie. That's a different one.
Well, what would be on the table for a discussion like that? Where could money get cut? I mean, is it looking into the defense budget? I mean, the Pentagon's budget, which by all accounts is a black hole with tons of money that, for classified reasons or other reasons just doesn't get publicly accounted for?
That's a conversation that we should have around budget time when we talk about what's on the table and what isn't, and there will be a good time to have that talk. I think one thing we can talk about right now, though, because we've seen these ideas come from the House Republicans, is simply raising the revenue that is owed to us. So the first bill that House Republicans said they wanted to pass was gutting spending slated for the IRS that came through the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office scored that proposal as adding $115 billion to the deficit. So the first thing that these supposed fiscal hawks want to do is come in and increase the budget deficit by over $100 billion by letting wealthy tax cheats get away with evading their taxes. Again, this is exactly the opposite of what this president wants to do, and it flies in the face of tax fairness. That's the right place to start. Make sure people are paying, especially those in the top 1%, paying what they owe. When it comes to negotiating spending, I'm not going to do that right here with you right now.
Why not? I think it's as good of a place as any to talk about where we can make some cuts.
You know what? I suspect you and I could come up with some pretty good ideas. That's just not the way it works, but maybe someday we can do that.
I was going to say that you were skirting that question. I am curious to know where the White House believes there can be cuts, especially if we're just talking about an ever-increasing debt. I think Americans don't understand we can't be individually in ever-increasing debt without consequences for our own lives. How can the government have this?
Yeah, no, that's a fair. Let me give you a couple of answers to that, because these are things that are already on the book. So I'm not negotiating from the podium, as they say. Saving money on prescription drugs, okay? That is a great way to save government spending, and that's in the Inflation Reduction Act. One of the things that does is it allows the government to use the bargaining clout of Medicare to bargain for lower prescription drugs. Saving money on clean energy, that's also in the Inflation Reduction Act. These are ideas that are, again, they're on the books. They were passed only with Democrats, by the way, and why you'd want to protect big pharma if we're trying to save government spending in healthcare, one of the more expensive parts of our budgets, is beyond me. But that's a good example, Katie, of a policy that's on the books that will cut spending quite significantly over the next 10 years.
I've got no time, but I'm going to ask you this. Are we headed for a recession or a soft landing?
The path to a steady, stable growth transition is a credible, a plausible path, and it keeps looking more so as we see inflation reports like consumer inflation last week, producer inflation this week. 6 months in a row of slower price growth. That's relief at the pump. We've seen some declines in some corners of food prices. We still have one of the strongest labor markets on record. Those are the kinds of momentum. Those are the kinds of things moving in the right direction that help us make this transition to a more steady, stable growth path, consistent with a soft landing.
So what do you think of all the layoffs that we're hearing announced? The layoffs at Microsoft. There's talk about the big banks cutting back as well.
I'm never happy to see a layoff. What I think is important to recognize is that we have a job market with about 10 million vacancies, 10 million job openings, and we now know from research that's been done that people who lose their jobs, never something you want to see, people who lose their jobs are regaining employment quickly, and that's the kind of economic dynamism that actually helps the economy. You know, some of these firms actually are kind of bloated on the labor market side, so they're cutting some employment, and many of those workers are finding jobs pretty quickly thanks to our very high level of job opening.